Welcome to this Roll for Crit review. Today we're taking a look at Gates of Delirium from Renegade Games. This is a horror Lovecraftian based game where you are all investigators, so to speak, and for whatever reason, you seem to be losing chunks of memory and things be going awry, if you will. Pretty much you're going insane, and those times you can't remember is you actually opening up gates. You'll be playing on this board here, and you'll be playing until all these elder gods are awakened and released, in which you will see who has the most points to prove, I guess, who's the best cultist?
Yeah, I think that's correct. So there's going to be a lot of insanity going on in this game, some madness. At the beginning of each round, the lead player will have a token, and they will flip it to decide if players are going to be sane or insane for the round. And that is determined for all the players, so whatever they pick, everyone else must abide by. The cards that you'll be playing on your turn in your hand have two different sides on them, a lighter side for sane and a darker side for insane. And on your turn, you'll be able to play two of these cards, but only using the effects of the side that it is for that round, sane or insane. And you will be using those effects according to the symbols in the corner of the card. Commonly, those symbols will allow you to add more figures to the map, which we will discuss later on, but that will allow you to control areas and score points as the game goes on. You can also get desperation tokens, which you can use for a few different types of actions on your turn if you have enough. You can see some of those at the bottom of the board there. You could maybe get some points or even flip the marker to sane or insane if you didn't like what it was on earlier. Some cards are used to collect gate cards. Each region on the map is associated with a different color of gate cards, and each one of those has a different number that you need to complete a set. When you take a gate card, you can take any from this face-up lineup, or you can take a face-down from the top of the deck if you're not sure which color that you're looking for, or you don't like any of the available options. And when one of those sets is completed, you'll be scoring one of those regions. Again, we'll get into that in a little bit. The rest of the cards have to do with different forms of set collecting to get you points at the end of the game. Ancient runes give you points the more that you have, up to a number of 5, but then you can also restart a new set if you go over 5, so you'll be able to accumulate more points the more runes that you have. There are lost pages. Each of these pages has a specific number unique to its card in the game, and if you have consecutive page numbers, that's worth more points than just having any two random page numbers. So if you have a lot of consecutive, that could really help your game out. And then there are also the map fragments. For each map fragment that you have, you'll get a point, and if you're managed to collect all 4 of a map, so there's a northwest, northeast region, etc., that gets you even more points.
Now, however, let's turn back to the board and those gates. As we stated earlier, if you get enough of the gate pieces, so let's take a look at the blue one because that requires the least number of pieces here. They form a very nice little circle for you to summon your demon in. If I can fit this on the board, it would usually be off to the side, but there's only so much camera space we have. Like so. You're going to take the topmost tile, place it on that, and that lets you know at the end of the game that's going to give you 10 points, which is pretty good. You're then going to look at that area and then score it based in the location and the points there. So Rockport, the blue area, first place gets 8, then 5, then 3. So right now, 2 people are tied. Ties just share the spot and they don't ruin anyone behind it. But for now, let's say Orange was in the lead. Orange would gain 8 points, purple would gain 5, and yellow would gain 3. Those pieces are removed from the board, so the area is cleared again. However, there are multiple blue gates such that the area can score more than once. So it will be to people's advantages probably to start putting meeples back into that area. The different areas that are worth more points require most cards. So Innsmouth, which gives a total of 10 points, needs 7 cards to score. Now, if you look at the tile I took earlier, there's a little scroll. There are 3 scrolls up there, and each time an Elder God with a scroll icon is summoned, you flip this over, which will either give an endgame goal or some bonus points of like every time you summon a gate, you can place a worker. This changes up the game and what strategies are viable as the game progresses. Like I said, once all of these tokens have been summoned one way or another, you will then tally up points based on these endgame points, what tokens you have. There are 40 or 80 tokens if you go above the score threshold here, and whoever has the most wins.
That is the game, and I think it's an interesting one for a number of reasons. It's really a combination, as you saw, of area control and set collection, with also kind of a bit of a race aspect to it, in the sense that you are competing with other players to complete gates before they can, but sometimes you might not want to complete gates until you're in position to make it worth your while. So that's a really interesting dynamic where you're looking at other players and someone is really close to getting all the orange cards, and they might be able to score that soon, but they don't have any pieces in the orange region. Maybe you do have pieces in the orange region. So do you let them complete it? Do you try to compete and take those cards so they can't get them? That's an interesting thing that I think it's really a combination of those elements that are pretty familiar if you've played a lot of board games before, but I don't know that I've ever seen them combined quite in this way.
Well, I think the thing that to me that really shines about this game is that insane moment. Because, like you said, the gates trigger the scoring. The people, though, are what allow for you to get those extra points. And obviously, the sane and insane split them up. So if you want to add more people, you want to play on the sane side of your cards. But to open gates, you have to collect gate cards, which is on the insane side. So it's very hard to be able to place people and open gates. It's actually why the flip the sanity disc for 4 desperation actions is probably one of the most important actions, at least in the multiplayer game setup. Because being able to add people for your first card, flip the tile over, then collect the final gate card you need is a very strong move.
Yes, that is definitely one of the best ways if you know someone's trying to complete a gate or get people in an area. Stop them from, don't make it insane that round if you have the option to do so, to prevent them from doing that. It is a really important choice, and I think we're always fans of cards in games that have multiple ways you can play them. You have to decide between. And the way that you have to figure out, first of all, what's best for me in this instance, and maybe even if that's good for me, maybe I'm more worried about what my opponents can do with those sides of their cards. And there's something I want to stop them from doing more than I want to let myself do something.
Absolutely. And there's also going to be that choice when you look at the cards of, let's say I want to play this rune. Is it worth giving up the light side half? Because, for example, you tuck the rune in, you're not going to see that card come up again. Or if I play this card for its dark side half, I'm giving up this map fragment, which either A, I need it, or B, maybe someone else is going to need it. And when the deck reshuffles, which it will in the multiplayer counts, even in the 2-player, I think we shuffled it. You might be a little worried about letting that piece go.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Trying to figure out, is it worth holding on and trying to get these consecutive numbers? Like, I really need a 14 to connect my 13 and 15. Do I want to hold on to those and hope I find it at some point? Or is that just a waste of time and I should really be using this for something else that's more valuable to me? And making those decisions is, it's a big part of the game.
No, I mean, absolutely. Those in particular are terrifying, in a great sense, because let's say in your example, you had the 15 and the 13 in hand. You're like, if I get that 14, that's a lot of points for 3 consecutive and maybe getting some more. But if I play those 2 pages early on, people know he needs the 14. So then there's this whole mind game of deciding what number cards you decide to play and trying to maybe hold some back so people don't take them for themselves or use them for something else. It's pretty interesting. Now, I keep bringing up the 2-player because we found that compared to some other games, it's not that it's not as fun. The 2-player just plays very differently because there's only 2 players and you rotate the first player token. In essence, what happens is, let's say I start the round, so I play my 2 actions. Jonathan goes, he plays his 2. Then he's starting the round, and he gets to play his 2 right after that. So that flip the sanity disc action isn't as powerful in the 2-player because you, in essence, have 4 actions of the second 2 you could change up. And it became a much different meta game, it seemed to be, like how we'd score gates, because it's much easier to get those gate pieces you need. There's not as much everyone trying to get Innsmouth gate pieces or something like that.
Yeah, in the 4-player mode and 3-player mode, those gate tokens that you can score, you can get locked out of those. Everyone can be competing for them. You might just have bad luck. And we found that sometimes, you're trying to split your attention between the board area for points and your own personal card area for points. And it's kind of a battle between which of those you think is worth going after at any given time. And I felt that in the 2-player, they were sort of evenly split, whereas in the multiplayer, it felt like, at least when we played, the board and getting those gates faster really was king. That could get you a ton of points. It was interesting, and it did seem like the points could be sort of swingy in that way, potentially. But other than that, I think it's a solid title. I enjoyed the different mechanics that they put into place. And I think we both enjoyed the way that the theme isn't just the same old Lovecraft stuff we've always seen. It does something a little unique with it.
Well, what's nice in that sense is that usually you're either full-on cultist and you're like, yeah, let's get Cthulhu. Or you're full-on investigator, let's kill Cthulhu. And while you are summoning the Elder Gods, it was very interesting, the Sane and Insane, because it was curious because the journal pages, if you read them, are like you going insane or something. And the map fragments, the idea behind that is like, where have I been? So while, I mean, it's not full on story, it's definitely a cool take on the Lovecraft mythos. And one I would like something that's much more story oriented to take on. And the mechanics do shine through, at least. Let's take a look at the crits and misses for Gates of Delirium.
We'll start out on the sane side with crits. Flipping the token between sane and insane at the start of the round is an interesting, meaningful choice that can have prolonged consequences for you and the other players.
Dictating the pace of the round by choosing whether to be sane or insane for that round is really fun as the first player. You'll have to tactically decide whether it's better for you for a certain side or whether it's going to be detrimental for someone if they really wanted a specific side.
There are multiple ways to score points and a variety of things to focus on so that your strategy can differ from game to game, including the different types of sets you can collect and the variety of ways you can play every card.
Connecting to our first crit, because the cards have both a light and dark side too, means they can be played in a variety of ways, adding to the variety of strategies to get the win.
Desperation tokens are an extra little mechanic that reward careful planning in advance, as you can save them up for larger plays or spend them as you go to enhance your turns early on.
What's great about the Desperation Acts is that 2 of them are great if you're behind, either swapping out gates or action cards, while the 2 help to get ahead, either just giving you 3 points or flipping the Sanity Disc to do some crazy combos. Now flipping to Insane with the misses. In the higher player counts, we have noticed that it's a little easier to be shut out. Maybe because everyone happens to be taking the blue gate so you can never open the gate you wanted to, or that people keep piling on the areas that you want to while another sector, someone else is taking advantage. It can be a little annoying at times if things are never scored when you wanted them to.
You can try to focus on your personal sets as an alternative to score points, but if you're not able to get at least 1 or 2 gates as the game goes on, they probably aren't going to help you get the win.
There are a lot of Lovecraft games out there, and I've played quite a bit of them. And as for this one, I did enjoy it. In particular, though, I think what's interesting is this may be one to look at if you're more of a 2-player. I found the 2-player experience really fun because there's definitely a lot more strategy, and it's really hard to feel shut out because you're going to get 4 actions in a row. And it also means as the opponent, when you give the other player the 4 actions, you have to think, what can I do to make sure I'm in the strongest position during all 4 of those actions?
Yeah, I think I agree with that sentiment overall. I enjoyed both counts, but 2-player felt a little bit more strategic in the end. But I think you could still enjoy it. It's not like that different of an experience with more players. It's a pretty solid medium weight game.
And I will say one of the reasons why I also like it if you're more than the 2 players, because if you have this on your shelf and let's say a third person happens to show up, it's still viable.
Yeah, that is definitely true. So one to take a look at. I know there's tons of Lovecraft games out there, and I wouldn't say like, man, rush out and buy this one. But if the idea of the mechanic sounded cool to you, I think you'll have a good time with it at the very least. So I think I recommend. So that's Gates of Delirium.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to point out, by the way, usually we try to keep these reviews evergreen, but we are during the quarantine right now, which is why things are a little bit weird. But let us know what your thoughts on them right now in this current review setup. We're probably going to put out more reviews this way for quite some time at least. This one actually got delayed a little bit because of that, if you haven't noticed. And we're still able to get the quality of the game out to you while we are not being able to sit next to each other.
Yeah. Let us know, have you played Gates of Delirium? What do you think about it and its different player counts, or any other thoughts on the game in the comments section below. Until we see you next time, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this is Roll for Crit.
Here's an idea. Support our Patreon or like and subscribe to this channel for more.
Subscribing gives you a +2 to your charisma stat.